I've always loved trips that make me forget who I am for a few days. That was the sentence I kept repeating to myself when I impulsively bought a ticket to Las Vegas during a cold, exhausting night in New York. My boss had given me a rare 7-day break from the office chaos, and all I wanted was sun, distraction, and maybe some casual company for a fun night. My name is Mara. I'm 28, live alone in a tiny studio in Queens, and until this trip, my life was safe, routine, and honestly, way too predictable. I didn't go to Vegas with any friends. Not out of pride, but because I genuinely needed some time alone. I rented an economy car, booked a cheap hotel off the strip, and decided to follow my impulses. Casinos, restaurants, bars, maybe a comedy show. I'm not much of a drinker, not impulsive. I'm the kind of person who triple checks everything before leaving the room. And maybe that's why I survived. The first night was uneventful. I had dinner downtown, walked along the boulevard, saw too many drunk people laughing too loudly, felt invisible among all the lights. On the second night, things changed. I was driving back to the hotel around midnight after leaving a jazz lounge on a less touristy street. I noticed a gray sedan that seemed to be following me. At first, I thought it was paranoia, maybe just coincidence. You know when a car turns onto the same streets as you? It happens all the time. But when I made a long U-turn just to be sure, it did the same. And when I stopped for a minute at an empty gas station, it stopped across the street. That's when I started shaking. I got back in the car and drove straight to the hotel. When I parked, I looked in the rearview mirror. It was there, about 20 meters away, engine running, headlights off. I wanted to run, but I forced myself to stay calm. I went up to my room quickly, locked the door, closed the curtains, turned off all the lights, and peeked through a crack in the window. It stayed there for over half an hour, and that's when I saw something that froze my blood. The car's back door opened about half an inch, just enough for the interior light to come on. And inside was something covered in black plastic, something big. Something with part of it slumped to the side. It looked like an arm. I had a reaction I'd never felt before. My knees went weak and I backed away from the window so fast I almost tripped on the carpet. I turned on the TV just to have some noise in the room, something to distract me from the insane thought forming in my head. That couldn't be what it looked like. Of course not. It couldn't be a body. I'm a skeptic. Always have been. I always go for the logical explanation first. Maybe it was a bag of clothes, a pile of trash. Maybe he was just a weird guy waiting for someone. Maybe he had a legit reason to stop in front of my cheap hotel in the middle of the night. But then, why did he turn off the headlights? Why didn't he get out of the car? Why did he follow me? I tried to convince myself to sleep, but couldn't. The car left around 3 a.m. I stayed awake until sunrise, and the next morning, I started doubting myself. Maybe I was just tired, stressed. Maybe it was withdrawal, because, see, it had been 5 days since I quit smoking, and my hands had been shaking ever since. It wasn't exactly easy to stay emotionally stable, and that trip, which was supposed to be an escape, was turning into an anxiety minefield. Still, the next day, I went out, visited a weird museum about organized crime, then a horror movie-themed cafe, kind of cheesy, but fun. When I got back to the hotel, the gray car was parked across the street, but now, the driver's door was slightly open, and no one was inside. The receptionist didn't know anything. "Probably belongs to a guest," she said, with a blank look. I tried to discreetly take a photo with my phone, but the lens fogged up. My hand trembled at the moment. That night was worse than the last. Someone knocked on my door twice without saying anything. I asked, "Who is it?" and no answer came. I looked through the peephole, no one, but I could swear the doorknob turned. Twice. The next morning, I asked to switch rooms. They moved me to the 3rd floor, view of a sidewall. Dark, stuffy room, better than sleeping near the street. That afternoon, I decided to check out, cancel the rest of the stay, find another place. But when I went down, there was a different clerk, and he said my reservation was locked for 2 more days, and that early cancellation would result in a huge penalty. I tried to argue, but he just shrugged. Something felt off. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That a car was looking at me weird? That there was something suspicious in the back? That a soft knock made me think the worst? I went back to the room, bought cigarettes from the lobby vending machine, smoked one for the first time in 5 days, and it felt like falling back into an old habit, and also like becoming myself again. That night I got an anonymous message. "You look like her." No number, no name, just that. I deleted it immediately, heart racing. But then I thought, like who? Who did I look like? The next morning, while sipping awful hotel machine coffee, I got another message. She was alone too. She smiled like that too. My stomach twisted. I checked all my profiles. Instagram, Facebook, even the old ones I barely used. My full name wasn't tied to the hotel reservation, just my first name. How could someone have connected those photos? To me, that's when I noticed a DM notification on Instagram. Private account, 0 followers, 0 posts. Blank profile pic. You smoke like her too. The message came with a photo, taken from a car window, of me ... the night before. Sitting on the side stairs of the hotel, cigarette in hand, looking at my phone. Exactly as I had been for about 15 minutes before heading up to sleep. My heart pounded. I threw the phone on the bed like it was poisoned. I started hyperventilating. Locked the door, latched the chain, opened the knitstand drawer, and grabbed a ballpoint pen. Ridiculous, but it was what I had. An irrational, childish impulse, holding something made me feel less vulnerable. For the first time, I seriously considered calling the police. But with what evidence? An anonymous account sending messages? A photo taken from the street. The whole city was under surveillance. Yet I felt completely invisible. Or worse, exposed. I left the hotel that afternoon. Wandered the strip aimlessly, the sun scorching the pavement, the crowds making it all more suffocating. I blended in with the tourists, but every step felt watched. Every shadow felt like a stare. At a crosswalk, while the pedestrian light was red, I saw the car. Metallic gray, tinted windows, parked across the street. And in the car's reflection, a figure in the passenger seat. Motionless, head slightly drooped. That was the body. It was. Before the light turned green, I turned and ducked into the first place I saw, a convenience store. Hid among the chip shelves, trembling. Waited 5 minutes. 10. Left through the back door, called a rideshare. When I got in, I asked to be taken to Fremont Street, on the other side of town. Maybe it would be busier, safer. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe that body was just a bag of trash ... But then the driver looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, "That car that's been following you. I've seen it parked in front of my building a few days ago." I shivered. What? Gray, Hyundai, sat for hours doing nothing. Those black windows. I saw people getting in and out, but never the driver. I told him to step on it. I got to Fremont, jumped out early, walked the rest, checked into a more expensive hotel, paid cash, and turned my phone off. For the first time, I felt a little off the radar. Or so I thought. Until I opened the closet in the new room that night and saw what was hanging inside. Inside the closet, hanging like a forgotten shirt, was a dress. But not just any dress. It was my dress. The same one I had worn the night before. The short black one with thin straps, slightly frayed hem from a laundry mishap weeks ago. I had packed it in my suitcase, zipped, security chain on the door. How did it get there? I approached slowly, in disbelief, touched the fabric. It was cold. Underneath it, carefully folded, was one of my panties. I jumped back, hitting my head on the closet door. Stumbled to the bed, grabbed my phone. My body was shaking, but I didn't dial 911. I called my sister. She answered sleepily, back in New York, but woke up in a second when she heard me stammering. "Mara, get out of there now. You need to leave that hotel. You need to go straight to a police station. They'll laugh at me, Alana. No fingerprints. No video. It's Vegas. They must get this kind of thing all the time. But this guy's getting into your room, for God's sake." I went to the suitcase, opened it. Everything looked in place. But what if he had a master key? What if he worked at the hotel? A long-term guest? Or worse, someone who came with me from New York? I felt nauseous. My skin burned. I grabbed my bag, ID, a jacket, went straight to the front desk. Asked to check out. Didn't care about a refund. Gave some excuse. Called another cab, asked to be taken to the airport. On the way, I saw the car. Again. Parked 2 blocks back in the dark. But this time, the back was different. The seat that once held a body now looked empty. But the shape of something wrapped in a blanket was in the trunk, slightly ajar. I spent the night at the Las Vegas airport. No ticket, no sleep. Just sitting, watching. My phone rang at 4:17 a.m. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then another message came. "You run better than she did." I looked around. Nothing. No one seemed out of place. The area was full of exhausted travelers, some sleeping with sweatshirts over their faces. But what if it was one of them? I got on the first flight with an open seat. Destination didn't matter. Denver. Hours later, in a generic, safe room with no easy access windows, I replayed everything in my mind. I remembered the taxi driver's look, the first photo, the dress in the closet, and the feeling of being the next copy of someone who was already dead. Maybe what saved me was quick thinking. Maybe it was luck. Maybe he gave up or found someone else who looked the same. I went back to New York days later, never saw that car again, changed my number, moved to a new apartment. But every time I hear an engine shift into reverse, or see a shape in a side mirror, or someone mentions traveling alone, I remember and revisit the fear that never completely left. Because he might still be out there, looking for another woman with my smile and the same black dress